As was customary at the time, John and Abigail adopted pen names for each other to use in their correspondence. John went by Lysander, and Abigail went by Diana. It was also common for John and Abigail to begin their letters by addressing each other as dearest friend. This gives you an idea of the level of love and tenderness that they held for each other. John and Abigail were very self-aware of their correspondence and even intended, at least John did, to preserve their letters for future generations of their family. John wrote to Abigail in 1776 to inform her that he intended to buy a leather binder for her letters, and that she should do the same for his. In theory, Martha and George Washington could have left behind an equally dense collection of letters from this time period. However, this was not the case, since George Washington asked Martha to destroy all of his letters. Due to the slow speed of travel during the 18th century, their letters were not direct responses to each other. Their responses would sometimes take months to reach each other, depending on where John was working at the time. The Adamses' letters indicate a marriage of equals, a concept that was mostly unheard of during a time when women were unable to vote or directly participate in public life. John not only respected Abigail's thoughts and opinions, he eagerly asked her to share them with him. A letter dated back to April 28, 1776, from John to Abigail reads, quote, "Is there no way for two friendly souls to converse together, although the bodies are 400 miles off? Yes, by letter. But I want a better communication. I want to hear you think, or see your thoughts. The conclusion of your letter makes my heart throb, more than a cannonade would. You bid me burn your letters, but I must forget you first." Unquote. Their letters covered topics ranging from military strategy to family health. Abigail's letters in particular paint a detailed picture of what public and private life was like for women during the 18th century. In her letters, she discusses her roles as a wife, mother, friend, head of household, and a political thinker. Abigail became a strong proponent of independence, not just as an American, but also as a woman. She was one of the first Americans to understand the American Revolution's implications for women. While her husband was in Philadelphia with the Continental Congress, Abigail famously wrote to John, quote, "I long to hear that you have declared an independency, and, by the way, in the new code of laws which I suppose will be necessary for you to make, I desire you would remember the ladies, and be more generous and favorable to them than your ancestors. Do not put such unlimited power into the hands of the husbands. Remember, all men would be tyrants if they could. If particular care and attention is not paid to the ladies, we are determined to foment a rebellion, and will not hold ourselves bound by any laws in which we have no voice or representation." Unquote. Abigail was particularly opposed to the absolute power husbands had over their wives during this era. The legal subjugation of married women to their husbands was similar to a master-servant relationship, which may have been why Abigail was also an advocate of black emancipation and education. However, this is not to say that Abigail was a feminist in the way we think of the word today. While she herself was rather outspoken and opinionated, she believed that most women ought to be reserved and docile, focusing on what she referred to as domestic government. Abigail strongly supported a woman's right to education, but did not argue the cause for a woman's right to vote. I should note that this would have been a pretty unheard position at the time, even amongst women. After joining her husband in Paris, Abigail fell into the role of ambassador's wife. This experience helped to prep her for her time as First Lady. Unlike Martha Washington, who had been an amiable host but refrained from all political discussions, Abigail inserted herself into the many political debates. She was so politically active during John's presidency that she earned the nickname Mrs. President. This was generally meant as a criticism of Abigail's influence over her husband. Abigail bore the criticism well, but she was grateful to be out of the public spotlight when her husband's presidency ended. Abigail expressed her thoughts and opinions on political matters with John regularly. She served as an unofficial advisor to her husband during his entire political career, including during his presidency. Although John thought highly of his wife's opinions, he and Abigail did not always agree on matters of policy. For instance, in 1798, after French officials informed John Adams that they would only hold talks with the U.S. if they provide a substantial bribe, Abigail thought the U.S. should declare war on the French, while John wished to pursue a peaceful, less costly solution. Controversially, two pieces of legislation the couple did agree on were the Alien and Sedition Acts of 1798. The Alien Acts put restriction on the waiting period for naturalization, allowing the government to detain foreign subjects, and permitted the deportation of any alien that was declared to be dangerous. The Sedition Act was a federal ban against anti-government writings and other works that were meant to incite opposition to the president or Congress. John Adams signed these acts into law and has since been condemned by historians for his anti-free speech, anti-immigrant legislation. There's debate among historians as to how much Abigail influenced his decision to sign these into law. John and Abigail Adams were the first residents of the White House in the nation's new capital, Washington, D.C. Their move to the White House came shortly after losing the election of 1800 and the death of their son, Charles, who succumbed to alcohol addiction. The couple only spent a few months in the White House, during which time construction of the massive home was still ongoing. It is during this period that Abigail famously hung her laundry to dry in the East Room. After his time as president, John and Abigail were able to spend more time together on their family farm. Abigail continued to run the farm and care for her family, as she had done for years. Their eldest child, Nabby, died of cancer at the family home in 1814. John and Abigail were married for 50 years, during which time they had 5 children, lived through revolution, war, scandal, long stretches apart, and witnessed the birth of a nation. They remained close friends, lovers, and confidants throughout their 50-year marriage. Abigail Adams died on October 28, 1818. John Adams died in 1826, just 16 months after their son, John Quincy Adams, was sworn in as the 6th President of the United States. Along with Barbara Bush, Abigail Adams is only one of 2 women to be both the wife and the mother of American presidents. This wraps up our episode on Abigail and John Adams. Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to check out the Salacious History page on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Our handle is @SalaciousHist. That's SalaciousHist. If you enjoyed today's episode, consider leaving a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps get the word out about the show. This podcast is researched, written, recorded, edited, produced, and marketed all by me. So please, show me some much-needed love and support by partnering with me on Patreon.com. If you have questions, corrections, or ideas for future episodes, you can email me at salacioushistory@gmail.com. I'm Sarah Duncan. See you next time.